So, what could go wrong with Hyliion stock? Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, if you've been subscribed to me or not, you know that I am very bullish on Hyliion. If you watched any of my portfolio videos, you know that I own almost 400 shares of the stock. Now, I know that's not as many as, some of you guys have, but it's a lot for my portfolio size. But, despite me being bullish on it, and despite me, making a lot of videos on it and having a vested interest in the stock doing well, on this channel, I don't like to look at, exclusively the upside. I don't like to do that. This is not a to-the-moon channel. These companies can do no wrong. As I do with every stock I own, I do like to take some time every once in a while and look at what could go wrong. And Hyliion is no exception. Let's talk about it. Now, let's start off with the short term first, the short-term problems. And the short-term problems mainly deal with Hyliion being both an EV stock and an emerging company, emerging growth company. As a matter of fact, this company is technically pre-revenue, and that makes it pretty risky in my eyes and probably in Wall Street's eyes. So it is very susceptible to dramatic moves like this, with the NASDAQ down 2.8%, like the Dow getting crushed, S&P getting crushed, Russell getting crushed. Risky stocks like Hyliion are the first things the market's going to sell off. We got the infrastructure bill getting delayed and, being kind of questionable, which, EV stocks are relying on to, help grow. And then we have one of the big ones. So this is something that we all know is going to happen soon. We're talking about the Fed taper. Now, if you aren't aware, a lot of the success of 2020, especially when the economy was crappy and everything was shut down, was due to the Fed stimulus. It's been buying assets every month, and we all knew that this was going to have to end sometime. And the Fed is signaling that they're going to start anytime. Now, it hasn't started yet, and the market's already pulled back this much. I don't have a crystal ball, and there are a lot of more experienced financial gurus than I am that are predicting this is going to happen, and I happen to agree with them. When the tapering starts, and especially when they finally raise interest rates down the line, it's going to make it harder for emerging companies, if they need to borrow money. And so these growth companies in the early stages, they're going to get destroyed in the short term, in my opinion. The market's a very chaotic place. We have no idea what's actually going to happen. But in my opinion, when this tapering hits, I think Hyliion's going to get absolutely crushed in the short term. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Now, let's get into the long-term stuff. Now, the short-term stuff is stuff that isn't really the company's fault. And it's stuff that, if you're a long-term investor and the price drops after the whole Fed taper thing happens and you're confident in a company, it's your chance to load up. Absolutely. But the longer-term stuff, and this is stuff that I've been watching over the quarters, the long-term stuff is potentially Hyliion's fault, or at least it affects the business model or the way Hyliion runs things. And in order for me to do that, I know some of you guys hate to see this part, but this right here is its original investor presentation. This is Hyliion making its initial pitch back in 2020. Mind you, this was during the pandemic, to its investors. And this was, at the time, its commercialization plan for the new Hypertruck ERX. This had commercialization ending in Q2 2022, and it has volume production starting during that time period. So we're expecting to see, people buying the Hypertruck ERX in 2022, and, that's where the money comes in. Let me show you something else. This right here is from the same PDF, is its availability. Notice hybrid electric available today as of 2020. The Hypertruck ERX, availability 2021. Now, having shown you both those things, oh yeah, there's one more thing I want to show you. This right here is the last thing, and this right here is from the same PDF. It's financial estimates. Now, estimates are just that, because lots of things could go wrong. But we had Hyliion making $1 million in revenue in 2020, $8 million in revenue in 2021, and $344 million in 2022 estimated. None of those things happened at all. Hyliion is still a pre-revenue company, and that hasn't happened yet. None of that has happened yet. As a matter of fact, Hyliion, in its Q1 earnings report, it said that it expected to recognize revenue on the hybrids at the second half of 2021, even though in the investor overview, it said it was available today, which was, oh my god, I really hated that quarterly report. I hated that entire thing. I'm sorry, I am bullish on Hyliion now, but that was a terrible earnings report in my opinion. That was rough. So why am I bringing up past stuff from Hyliion, right? I'm supposed to be talking about the future. Well, it bleeds in. Let me show you. Now, according to their latest quarterly report, the Hypertruck ERX is projected to be commercially available in late 2022 and followed by volume ramp up. That is a lot different than their estimation in 2020. Like, they had volume production starting in 2022, and it was supposed to be available in 2021. Like that, like this right here is much, much different. Now, to their credit, I mean, they're facing supply chain issues just like everyone else in the world is. So they are going through stuff, and we don't quite know how much of it is due to the supply chain issues or how much of it is due to Hyliion. So we have to give them, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt in this case. But the point I'm trying to make here is that every time they come out with these, financial results, they keep pushing back expectations just a little bit, sometimes a little bit more, but every time they keep pushing expectations back. Another example for their hybrids, and this is from their PDF from their Q1 quarterly report. They expect to recognize revenue in the second half of this year, which is going to happen. I verified that. That's fine. However, in the Q2 quarterly results, they mentioned they toned it down a little bit. While Hyliion expects to begin generating revenue from its improved hybrid product after launch later this year, it does not expect the revenue generated in 2021 to be material. This was not mentioned in their last quarterly report. You can go check it yourself. So that right there is my biggest problem with the stock long term. The biggest challenge to the stock, the biggest thing that can go wrong go forward, well, with the stock and with the company is, these expectations keep getting pushed back. Like, what if the Hypertruck gets, things happen and it gets pushed into 2023? Now, if this was a bigger company with a lot more capital behind it, yeah, I'd feel a lot better because it could probably withstand a few more years of trouble. Like, for example, Intel, when it pushed back its 7nm chips. Now, I'm not worried about Intel because Intel's got capital to withstand the onslaught for years to come. With Hyliion, with an emerging company that still hasn't even recognized revenue yet, that's an issue with me. Like, now, I'm obviously an owner of the stock, so I'm very confident that they're going to follow through with it. But, as someone who, likes to look at these companies thoroughly, I do like to take a look at the risks. And I think if you're an investor, I think you should too, especially on stocks that you love. And so if the project, ERX project gets delayed, maybe people start losing their enthusiasm and start looking elsewhere. That is a thing that can happen. That is a thing that can happen. And another thing that I sort of just thought of is this is sort of the middle option, the sort of mediocre option, which might be the worst option because it just drags it all out. So what if the ERX, it hits, it goes to the market, and it either does nothing or it doesn't make the mark that we think it's going to make? Especially with the smaller companies, just not a lot of people buy it. That's another risk another thing that can go wrong with the stock. Like, for example, what if the Hypertruck ERX releases the product and the bigger OEM, the semi manufacturers, they give these they give these would-be Hyliion buyers a better deal. That's something that can go wrong, and Hyliion over time it loses out. Now, again, as I keep saying, I don't think it's gonna happen, but it could. And if the hybrid, it doesn't sell as well as they thought, or the ERX gets delayed, or it actually releases and doesn't make the splash that Hyliion thought it did, especially with these smaller customers, like these target customers, like the ones that Hyliion really wants to get, they might not express any interest. That is something that could go wrong with the stock. Like, as far as I know, I haven't read anything about these bigger customers, like these bigger potential customers like Amazon, UPS, FedEx. I haven't seen any interest from these customers in Hyliion so far. I mean, they're probably waiting to see what, you know, Hyliion does, you know, out of the gate. But, you know, that's just another thing that, you know, something we gotta watch. But anyways, those are just some of the things that I think could go wrong with the stock or the company in the short term or the long term. Now, obviously, I'm buying more shares here and there, so I'm still bullish on them in the long run, especially if you know, watch my last video. But, you know, I still have to watch out for these risks. But anyways, take care, have a great day, and eat your vegetables.